podcast where people reach their goals and develop confidence one mind shift habit at a time. Let's join our host, certified coach Christina.
Hello, welcome to this episode of Conversations with Coach. Let me ask you this question. Have you ever, or do you know of an athlete, or maybe you yourself have participated in a sport for, maybe a really long time, and you make the decision that it's time to do a transition, and you immediately hear people say, "You're quitting?" I know as a gymnastics coach working with younger age girls, that is a common thing. And I'm working on reframing that because why should the word retire be only reserved for people who are in executive positions who have been with their organization for an extreme amount of time? Or why should it only be reserved to professional athletes after they have participated in their sport for an extended period of time? You may also wonder, what is it like for an athlete after they have completed their career, their athletic career, and it's now time for them to transition and join the rest of us? It is a difficult period for them. Think about it. Any sport that you want to think about, most of the time, the athletes started when they were really, really young. And if they're fortunate enough to make it to the professional level, that can take them anywhere into their 30s. Some of them, Tom Brady, you can even be in your 40s. And what about, do they have a plan? Well, on this episode of Conversations with Coach, I am going to be joined by someone who actually has written a book. And the title of the book is called When the Buzzer Sounds. So while I get ready to do her intro, I want you to press share, and I want you to also send this to someone else who you know might be able to benefit from it. In case this is your first time joining me, I'm Christina Callaway. I am a confidence and mindset coach, and I work with athletes, parents, coaches, and organizations. I help them to identify and overcome their mental and performance blocks. And I am here to help you. My guest today, as I already alluded to, has a wealth of knowledge and information that we're going to get to hear from her. Her name is Lisa C. Willis, and please don't forget the C. She was born and raised in the LBC, also known as Long Beach, California. Something about those C's, because I got two of them, and let me tell you, they are powerful. She fell in love with the game of basketball on the playground of her elementary school. And this love story started when Lisa C. pursuing her love interest, a fifth grader who loved playing basketball at recess. Now, I don't know about you, but when I read that, the first thing that comes to mind, one of my favorite movies, Love and Basketball. Although her recess pursuit didn't land her the guy, she still believes she received the long end of the stick. Her third grade pursuit of a fifth grader left her on the elementary basketball court with a new love interest, basketball. The two of them, Basketball and Lisa C., created an amazing love story and have been traveling, winning, and evolving together ever since. Now, remember I just said most athletes start really young when they start. She was in the third grade and didn't fall in love with the guy, but fell in love with the basketball. Lisa C. went on to receive a basketball scholarship to UCLA. She won an Olympic gold medal, was a first-round draft pick in the WNBA. She won a European championship and even became the first woman to coach within the New York Knicks franchise. Cannot wait to talk to her about that. And after wrapping up her on-court relationship with basketball, Lisa C. extracted sports concepts found in her best-selling book, When the Buzzer Sounds, to help athletes, students, and executives and others transitioning to new stages perform at their highest level. I want you to put some love in the chat and help me to welcome our guest, the one and only Lisa C. Willis. Hello, Lisa.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
I am good. I really enjoyed that bio in your commentary. So thank you for giving my life a little bit of color.
Absolutely. It is very colorful, and I cannot wait for us to jump in just so I can learn a little bit more about you. Well, I'm going to do like a side note and share with my listening audience. You and I actually met a couple of weeks ago. We are newfound friends, and we met because we were at an event for successful authors. And you have written your very first book, which I'm going to go ahead and share mine. I have with it. And don't hate, but there are perks when you get to meet someone of this statue in person. You get your own autographed copy. Yes, I have mine. But we were learning more information on becoming successful authors and taking our books that have already been written to that next level. So that's how she and I met. And it was just so ironic that she was sitting in front of me. I had on a boot, so I was sitting on the outside so that I wouldn't be in anyone's way. And we just struck up a conversation. And lo and behold, come to find out, our connection is through sports. And I'm always of the opinion that like attracts like. And it was a phenomenal, amazing, life-changing event. And I have a new friend in Lisa C. Now, Lisa, I shared a good bit about your basketball career and a little bit about you from the athletic side, but I want you to just share a little bit more with the audience about your story.
Yeah. I mean, for a long time, I tried to deny how important basketball was for me just due to negative connotations. Like,
Mhm.
I might not be as intelligent. It was really important for me to be viewed as intelligent. I didn't want to be viewed as a jock. I wanted to
Mhm.
be viewed just as a major contributor to this world in any room that I walked in. And so it wasn't until my dad died, honestly, that I fully embraced what basketball meant to me and what basketball taught me. But like you said, Lisa C. Willis from the LBC, don't forget the C. And I'm the baby of five. And
Okay.
I just am a family person. I grew up, my dad was a coach, so I had the opportunity to watch him coach and really get behind the scenes, you know, just knowledge on how to be a good player, but also a good leader. Went to my dream school, UCLA. And
Yeah.
while on the basketball court, I had an amazing experience. I collected all the awards. And, from the outside looking in, like I did it because it landed
Mhm.
me the opportunity to play for the USA team and get
Mhm.
drafted. Emotionally, there was a different story being told.
Okay.
There was a different life that I was leading or
Mhm.
living. And that's really where kind of when the buzzer sounds comes from,
Mhm.
is physically, I had all the skills to be great, but
Yes.
then not understanding how to separate my identity from my work, from my role, not
Yeah.
understanding, you know, where my value comes from, uh, acceptance. There's a lot of social, emotional, and self awareness and discovery stuff that really was birthed during my college experience.
Oh,
And
wow.
oddly enough, college was like my favorite time to be playing basketball. But emotionally, that was also the time that I was struggling to make sense of
Mhm.
what meaning my life had. And so
Mhm.
from there, I did the cool things that you mentioned. I will say you made me sound a lot cooler than I am. I went on to do the cool things that I mentioned. And as I was
Uh-huh.
able to make sense of my basketball experiences at UCLA, then I started teaching players and teams and executives and
Mm.
churches about these very same concepts that help us to ultimately perform at a higher level.
Absolutely. Listen, I only was just repeating what is out there and that it is true. And it's so funny that when we hear other people speak about us, it's like, really, I did all of that because we are just so in the moment. We're just on automatic pilot. We're just doing life. Life is lifing and we're doing it. And I find it very interesting that you mentioned your most enjoyable time as an athlete occurred when you were in college. However, that mindset and the mental capacity to be able to understand and grasp it all and really to self-identify didn't happen till beyond that. And I don't know that that's necessarily by accident. I think when we're thinking of college students and the transition that they make from high school to college, that's a huge jump. This new self-found independence. What do I do with it? But also being able to separate from I am an athlete and I'm also a person. And it's that reintroduction into themselves that is very pivotal. You mentioned that you came into that self-discovery at the death of your father. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, when transition is such an interesting thing. Like I am a firm believer that change happens, but transition, sometimes we stay stuck in the past. So
Mm-hmm.
when I retired from the game of basketball due to an unforeseen injury, I was forced to figure out what all I had to offer. I was forced to figure out who I was outside of Willis 40. And
Mm-hmm.
that's part of the reason why I go by Lisa C. Willis, because that is who I am. Willis 40 is my role as a basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
But in trying to find meaning of who I am, what I have to offer, make my basketball career something that I did for so many years of my life, to make it
Mm-hmm.
make sense and to find purpose out of it,
Mm-hmm.
that was a tough journey. I had to change, but the transition was tough. And
Mm-hmm.
my dad died, I would say, 7 years after I retired. I
Okay.
want to say 7 years after I retired. And it was at that moment when I reflected on my relationship with him and all the things that basketball has taught me, because he was my coach. A little bit
Mm-hmm.
more of a coach than a father growing up, but he
Of
was my
course.
coach. And so reflecting on all of the good times and the trying times that I had with him, I was able to realize, whoa, like I'm actually dope because of my experience on the court. Not because I
Mm-hmm.
was a top 3 point shooter, but because of the way that I had to prepare to be a top 3 point
Mm-hmm.
shooter. Now I know a whole lot about preparation now, and
Yeah.
how I had to be able to be a leader on the coach, whether I was be a leader on the court, whether I was a coach, whether I was a team captain or just a teammate. That helps me today when I work with other people and be a teammate, and
Mm-hmm.
communication and all of these things from the game of basketball that I have.
Mm-hmm.
It contributes to me being arguably the dopest person that I know. JK. No, but it really is a part of my identity, even though it
Mm-hmm.
was a role that I played.
Right.
And so that was what really helped me tap in to all of my experiences. I
Mm-hmm.
like to say all experiences matter, because it's about the
Yes.
way that we process those experiences. And so just that reflective process. I know in my book, there's a chapter called The Step Back. That was my
Mm-hmm.
signature move.
Mm-hmm.
And when my dad died, I had to step back to see what needed to come next. And so just in that
Right.
reflective process, that's really what helped me to get a little bit clearer on who I am and to find acceptance,
Mm-hmm.
maybe approval in some areas, but
Mm-hmm.
acceptance with who I am.
Absolutely. That was all very good. Let's, for the audience that is watching, their athlete, their college athlete, and they're just tuning in because they heard about your accolades and like, oh my gosh, I want to, hear what she's got to say. You've got their attention at this moment. What is it that you would share with them being in college, that the experience that they're having, that they want to grab hold of this opportunity to help set them up for their transition?
Yeah, pay attention to how you feel. For so long, sports has been something where you just grind it out and you just push through and you don't really stop to pay attention to your emotions. Like I forgot the movie, but it was an old movie with Tom Hanks, and he was coaching a women's baseball team. And it was like, there's no crying in
There's no
baseball.
crying in baseball. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
and it's like, but that's been the kind of tone when it comes to sports. But
Hmm.
sports literally is a microcosm of the world. And so through sports, through dealing with those emotions, through dealing with wins and losses and failures and successes and resiliency and all of the things,
Hmm.
like, yes, you have those skills that you'll get, but then it's the emotional part that will actually allow you to move forward. One
Hmm.
analogy that I like to use is who I am is like a car. So I always chose the Bentley coupe, and my Bentley coupe was sweet. It was black with black rims, black
Rims, yeah.
interior with the tint, black on black on
Black
black.
on black, black on black on
Exactly.
black.
And I had the best engine, my mind.
Of
And I
course.
had the best vehicle, my skill set.
Right.
But if on the inside of the car it's dirty and it stinks and it's not comfortable to be in, although I have a GPS, although I have the vehicle, although I have the engine, I'm not going to want to go far. And even if I am driving, I'm not going to get there as quick as possible because there's all this other stuff that's making me feel like I don't want to do it. And that's the emotional part that we can't neglect.
Yeah, come on, talk this talk. Because let me tell you, one of the things working with athletes from the mindset side of it is they don't understand, especially on the collegiate level, they don't understand the access that they have in that moment. And even if they recognize that they have that access, they don't understand how to use it, preserve it, cultivate it for their benefit, for their next step. And I think you sharing this with them and helping them to just tune in and not be just only so focused on their game, but also focus on these transferable skills. Because one of the things that you and I both know, we know that corporations love athletes because they love their work ethic. They love the way that they think, them being able to think quick, being able to pivot. And I'm making general statements because everybody may not always be like this, but what they do know is athletes are natural born leaders. And those are the things that companies want on board to help with their success. Now, you mentioned about separating your role from your identity. Let's talk a little bit more about the importance of being able to do that. And not just so much of it. Yes, it applies to you because you are an athlete, but just helping people in general. I work with some executives who are just grind, work. And then they have trouble flipping that switch off when it's time for them to interact with family. So let's talk about separating role from identity.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And I believe that when you don't separate the two, now you end up with worth issues. You end up feeling lost. You end up not really knowing who you are. The reality is that after retiring from basketball, I became more of a hooper than I was before. When you look at all the identities that I have, as far as being a good communicator and detail oriented and a good teammate and all of these things that basketball gave me, I just don't play defense and shoot the jump shot anymore. But I find that that's important because if you look at your role is just the hat that you are wearing. The role is what you do. Your identity is who you are. So I might wear the hat or play the role of a basketball player and the sister and the church member and all of these different things. But when you take away all of those relationships, because they can be taken away just like that, excuse me, I'm left with who actually am I? Now, one thing that I'll say is a lot of the roles that we play contribute to our identities because, again, I think that I'm a very resilient person and I learned resiliency from my role as a basketball player. But that is super important because when we go into something else, we're talking about transition. In your intro, you were talking about leaving the playing field, going to corporate America.
Yeah.
I had to deal with trying to figure out who I was and why should somebody hire me? Yeah. I am a really good 3-point shooter, but I don't know if that's going to help Nike. It's like, well, let me tell you why me being a good 3-point shooter helps Nike. Yeah. I changed my role, but who I am being a good 3-point shooter is I am performance driven and I have a different level of preparation. I just did a video the other day about how I was a catch and shoot 3-point shooter. Well, there's a lot of prep work that went into me actually being able to get that shot off. I'm taking that to Nike, my preparation. I'm taking it to Nike, my ability to be reflective and to watch game film. A lot of people don't watch game film in sports or outside of sports.
They don't.
And so if I don't extrapolate my identity from these roles that I play, I'm walking around as if I'm not the business. And I'm like, no, I am the business because these are the things outside of basketball that I have to offer. And that is important. And people are killing themselves literally because they don't find value in their identity only
Come
their role.
on. Oh my gosh. You have just really hit on a really good subject, and I don't want us to go past it. I have so many of my friends, great athletes. I mean, phenomenal athletes on the collegiate level, on the professional level, and they are still posting things from their heyday, and they're up in their 50s. And it's like circa 1988. And it's like, I see what their transferable skills are. I see how they are still this amazing person, but it doesn't negate the fact that they go through this depression. I don't know this to be true, but I would venture to think that Tom Brady is struggling with walking away from the sport of football because he has not done this very thing. He has not separated himself from the role of a football player and his identity of Tom Brady. And it's almost like it's like I said at the very beginning, you having to get introduced with you at the age that you are, it's a really big mind trip, but you do it so well in terms of speaking the language that's familiar to you, number one, which is basketball, everything related to basketball that you did. And you're like, wait, let me repurpose this because that wasn't what I did only. That's who I am. Like that sport developed all these great things. So I don't have to sit up here and wonder what's going to happen to me when I'm no longer this player, when I'm no longer number whatever to everyone else. And I don't want that to be missed in this conversation because being able to separate role and identity is hugely important. And not just from a sports perspective, but if you think about women who have been stay-at-home moms, and that is a hard, difficult job, and they find that they're ready to enter to do something different, but they shun away from it because they don't know how to see those transferable skills. And not only can they not see it, they don't know how to show it to someone else. And so I know that part of this, and you and I both know that part of this comes from knowing what your true value or where your true value comes from. Talk about how you made that discovery.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you this much. It was tough to make that discovery, because chapter 2 in the book is called Worth versus Value. And I dive into worth being something that is given externally and value being something that's internal. And I remember at UCLA, I balled out. When I say I balled out. And after the game, my coach is in the press conference, and she's talking about everybody else except for me. I felt very worthless, and I let that impact how I felt about myself. I literally was crying. I was emotional because it was a sheesh. Like I did all of this for the team, and you don't appreciate that. So it's almost like if a tree falls in the woods, doesn't make a sound if nobody is there to see it.
Exactly.
The reality is, if I ball out and my coach doesn't mention me, did I ball out?
You balled out.
I think so.
Exactly.
It's up to me to determine,
to
my value. And so, that's just really important because there are things that might not be worth a lot to other people, but it has its own significance for me. And the number one thing or the best example that I could talk about is just who I am.
Yeah.
I might not be worth much to a lot of people out there, but the number one person who has to value me is me. And from there, we go into acceptance. And I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, acceptance versus approval.
Right.
The first step is to accept the great things, because some people have an issue with that. Accept the great things that I bring to the table and also accept some opportunities that I have. Might not approve of them, but without accepting who I am and my identity, there's no way that I could become better. If I'm ignoring the fact that I get a little bit sensitive to feedback, if I'm ignoring the fact that, I don't like when people tell me what to do, well, how am I going to be coachable? I will never be coachable if I don't accept the fact that I kind of have an issue with you telling me what to do.
Right.
And I have to do the work to figure out I'm the baby of 5. I was always told what to do. And so now I don't like it. And let me just say, that is not my story. Just an example. I love feedback. But,
it could be someone else's though, and that's real.
It could be. It is. It is
Right.
somebody else's story. And so it's
And
just,
recognizing that that is what, when we get triggered, sometimes we're so focused on what triggered us and
yeah,
we don't pay attention to, well, why did that trigger you? And so what you're making the point is, if being told what to do becomes scratchy for you, then go back to where it evolved from. What is it? And like you said, it could possibly be, or for instance, for others, being the youngest child and everybody telling you what to do and you not feeling like your voice is being heard.
right.
And even when you uncover these truths, these opportunities, it's how you handle that information, that new information.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, something I want to ask you about, I said in the beginning that I was going to ask you, and I know the audience is probably like, well, you said you were going to ask her about that and you haven't yet. So we're talking about, you discovered what your identity, what your role is, how it's separate from the basketball player now that you are transitioning into this next phase of your life, what that looks like, and knowing your value and where it comes from. Now, you have done something that very few females have been able to do, coaching in the NBA. How did separating your role and identity and knowing your value and where it came from, how was that instrumental in you being able to do that?
Yes. And the last thing I would add to that is knowing the purpose that God has for my life. I like to say that I'm a coach, not necessarily a basketball coach, but I coach people. That was really important because just me processing how certain scenarios or experiences in college made me feel. When I was really able to process that, now I knew how to deal with people who are experiencing that. So I was talking to my sister earlier today in our Bible study about the Beatitudes. And one thing is, blessed are they who mourn, so that they can comfort somebody else. And so all of the mental and emotional things that I dealt with silently as a collegiate athlete, I was able to process that. And I was able to be a blessing to the Knicks G League team because I was able to comfort and guide and teach and coach them on how to perform higher and essentially get closer to their dreams. And so had I have never processed my experiences at UCLA, had I have never done a inventory of who I am, I wouldn't have even known that I was good enough to do that.
Come on now.
When you think about what makes a good coach, leader, pastor, parent, CEO, those are things that I got from the game of basketball. I wouldn't have ever known that I was highly qualified. Whether they were checking a box or not, I pray that they weren't, but whether they were checking a box or
It
not,
didn't
by
matter.
having me as a first woman coach, I was highly qualified for that position because of my experience. And now I can help other people get to where they're trying to go. And so, identity, the role changed, but my identity grew from that.
That is so important to hear. And like you said, it matters not what someone's intentions, their thoughts, their motives, whatever. When you know that irrespective of their approval, it does not diminish who you are and what you are and whose you are, you can walk with your head up. Because what we do know is, in my faith and your faith tells us this, that all things work together for our good. And so even that means that good stuff, and that means that not so good stuff, it's all working together. We just have to have a mindset where we are looking for it and that we see it, because it's easy to see bad things. I mean, that's just all around us. It's so prevalent to see bad things. But what is nice, and I think what is recognized, and hopefully that's what they recognized with you, was the fact that you still persevered beyond all of that. You still had the tenacity, you had the integrity, you had the fortitude, you had the desire, you had the passion, you had the faith to even push beyond that. We think about flowers that are planted or seed that's planted in soil. That is yucky. I mean, being down in the dirt of something and not seeing sunlight for we don't know how long it takes.
Right.
Some, there's certain trees and species of trees that they don't come up out of the ground until they are fully grown. Do you know how long that takes? That's a lot of cultivating in mess in soil. And so to your point of being able, in spite of when we are in those difficult times, to grasp the nugget out of it for our good, to be of benefit to someone else.
Yep.
And in you taking your experiences, and that's the other thing, the transparency. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want anyone to know, that's okay. We don't want to overshare, but it's in the sharing where others can say, you know what, I identify with what she just said because I'm right there myself. I'm going through that too. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you sharing your story with us. I mean, we could go on and keep talking. And I know that you are writing a second book. And so I'll just have you down to come back and share more.
Nice.
But I do a call to action for my audience. And this is where my audience is used to this. You all know I'm going to provide a way for you to reach out to Lisa C. and definitely get in touch with her. If you've got a collegiate athlete right now, and no matter what year they are in school, reach out to her so she can help to prepare them to get ready for when the buzzer sounds. Because one thing is that we know, the buzzer is going to sound, and we're using that metaphorically speaking. But even if you're not an athlete, there's going to come a time when the buzzer sounds. And what's going to happen? How are you going to transition? This is how you're going to connect with Lisa C. She is on Instagram, she's on Twitter, and she's on LinkedIn. Don't worry about writing it down. I'm going to put it in the show notes. And we have been talking about her book, When the Buzzer Sounds, and you're going to be able to go to her website to get this. And I want you to visit her website. I want you to sell her out. Christmas is coming up. You've got some people, whether they're athletes or non-athletes, like I just said, the buzzer is going to sound for all of us. And it's a guide to transition players from the court to the life, to their life after. Okay. So whether or not, let's say, for instance, I gave that example before I said that you could be a stay-at-home mom and you're ready now, your little ones are in school and you're ready now to go and find you. That's a transition. That buzzer just sounded on you being that stay-at-home mom. So I want you to reach out to Lisa. She's got a wealth of knowledge. This book is going to be your first step. Okay. You're going to get the information from the book to know how to do it. But then there comes implementation. And when there's time to do implementation, you want to partner with someone. First of all, partner with the person who wrote the book. Secondly, partner with someone who has already done it, been through it, made some mistakes. Not that you won't make mistakes, but you don't have to make those mistakes. So I want you to visit her website as well. You can set up your clarity calls, email her, contact her, let her know this is where you are and you would like to work with her. You might be you might belong to an organization, and you might say, oh my gosh, I've got to share her. I've got to share this person because we need this. We need this whole thing of how to transition into leadership. Like I'm getting ready to apply for a more leadership position in my organization, and I'm not quite feeling as confident. That's where Lisa C comes in. You don't have to do this alone. You reach out to her. So again, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. And I do a final thoughts with all of my guests. You didn't know this was coming.
I did not.
And I would like for you to share the one mindset shift that you would like to leave with individuals about when the buzzer sounds.
Yes, that is easy. It is 3 words. I am enough. Okay, I am enough. So many times we negate everything that happened prior to the buzzer sounding because we're walking into something else. And the reality is that, yes, you might take off your hat, you might take off your uniform, you might take off, your business suit and put on something else. But you, the person walking into that next door, walking into that next chapter, you're enough. You are absolutely enough. Just figure out the things in your identity that's going to help you be successful in the next chapter. You are enough.
Absolutely. You are enough. That should just be our anthem, that we are enough, because life has a way of telling us that we're not, that we need to do more, and then we become overwhelmed. But take Lisa's advice. You are enough. Period.
Period.
Nothing else to add to it.
Period.
Period. Lisa, thank you again for coming on Conversations with Coach. I am looking forward to following you. I'm looking forward. I'm probably going to need to get a couple more copies. I've got some individuals that could definitely benefit from reading your book. I've enjoyed reading it since you signed my copy. So thank you again, and keep me posted about your next book coming out. Is that, you want to give us a teaser?
Yeah, I will give you a teaser. It was, in the future, a little distant future, but essentially, it's a book about being an athlete, a woman athlete in corporate America. And so,
Mm.
yeah, the teaser is
Ah,
basically there are barriers set up around us that makes it a little bit harder, and it puts a glass ceiling up there. But who we are as athletes will chisel that thing right out the way because of our identities that we possess. So it's similar
absolutely.
to, it would be like the Cosby Show, a different world. It's a spinoff that's very
I
specific
like
to
that.
being a woman in corporate America.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love that comparison there. That gave a great visual. Now, before I do let you go get out, is there something, or do you have any courses, workshops, something coming along, and like say they get the book and they're like, okay, I need more. What would be their next step?
Yeah, I have a coaching program. It's called the Offensive Mentality, and it's basically to coach people to aggressively perform at a higher level. And so when
Mm,
people are trying to go to a new leadership position
hmm.
or start a new business, I mean, when I tell you the types of people that I worked with, athletes are probably the fewest amount, the
Yeah,
least amount, but
yeah,
everybody wants to perform higher. And so the
sure.
offensive mentality is something that, again, I've taken from basketball. I would say that I didn't play defense because defense feels very reactive. And even if
Yes.
the other team had the ball, I still was, through my body angling and whatnot and my positioning, I still would be the offender. I would be the aggressive person. And
Mm-hmm,
so I got it in my head. I don't play defense. I'm only
mm-hmm.
offensive minded. And so that's what I take that concept and help people be aggressive about performing higher. So that's my coaching
Absolutely.
program.
There you go. So bring her into your organization to help to develop your leaders even further, not only with their skill set, but with their mindset, because that is what's going to be everlasting. And that's where these organizations are going to change. Or even let's just say in your personal lives and you're dealing with relational challenges, reach out to Lisa. She will be able to help you to identify and also to separate your role from your identity. Lisa, it has been an honor and a privilege to have you on. I cannot thank you enough. And just looking forward to our continued friendship and you coming back on to Conversations with Coach.
Yes. Thank you for having me. This was a blast.
You're welcome. I'm going to say goodbye to my audience and I'll be right with you. There you have it, everyone. That was like near and dear to my heart because I love sports so much. And I know the benefits that I myself got from participating in sports and how it now has helped me after the buzzer sounded. Thank you again for coming here and joining me each week. I am actually celebrating this month my 1 year anniversary here on Conversations with Coach, and I could not and would not have done it without you and your support. So I thank you so much. If you aren't following me on all of my social medias, I invite you to do so. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all of them are Christina Mindset Coach. And I invite you to join me there. Share me with your family, your friends, anyone else who may not be following me. Have them to follow. Maybe you are needing that mindset shift. Maybe you've got an athlete who is freezing and their performance has become irregular and there's a lot of fear involved. I ask you to follow me on my website and reach out and get your 15-minute clarity call. And I shared this previously too, but I mentioned at the beginning that Lisa and I met when we attended an author event. That's because you are looking at the author of her very first book. So I'm writing it and I'm self-publishing it. I'm going to put some information in the show notes where if you would like to help me along this journey, I would be more than grateful for you to do that. But my book is entitled The Mindset Playbook. It is a guide for athletes to help them to identify and overcome their mental and performance blocks. So definitely can't wait to get this into your hands. And don't worry, we'll be talking about it more here on Conversations with Coach. And I want you to have a great rest of your week. And I want you to remember that your life is only as good as your mindset. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Coach. Please be sure to follow Coach Christina on all of her social media platforms. And remember, life is only as good as your mindset.